Good morning, Facebook, YouTube, Daily Motion, and Twitter. This is Rich again, back for your first video blog of the day for Friday, March 6th, 2015, around 5:33 in the morning in Belleville, Massachusetts. It's a cold morning this morning. What else is new? Only about 10 degrees. The high temperature is going to be well below freezing. About 25, so no melting today, but beginning tomorrow it's going to start warming up and we're going to get some significant melting next week. Temperatures in the 50s. Some news to report: the Calgary Flames beat the Boston Bruins by a score of 4-3 in a shootout. Bruins get 1 point, but the Bruins continue to lose games like crazy, which isn't good. And the Panthers and the Flyers and the Senators are all on the Bruins' tail for the last wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference. And the Minnesota Twins beat the Boston Red Sox in spring training action by the score of 9-8. And that's about it on the news. My first video blog subject of the day is a little bit of sports history. It's about the former Buffalo Braves franchise in the NBA. The Buffalo Braves played in the National Basketball Association from 1970 through 1978. And they were an expansion team. They came into the league along with the Cleveland Cavaliers and Portland Trail Blazers. They played in the 8-year history in Buffalo in the Atlantic Division with the Boston Celtics, New York Knicks, and Philadelphia 76ers and Washington Bullets. And the home arena was the Buffalo Memorial Auditorium, also known as the Aud, and they played 16 home games between 1971 and 1975 in Maple Leafs Gardens in Toronto, Canada. And their first owner was a guy named Paul Schneider, and they were coached by Basketball Hall of Famer Dolph Schayes as their first coach. And in their first stars they drafted in the NBA expansion draft were Bob Kaufman and Don May, but they passed up a golden opportunity in 1970 to draft Calvin Murphy, who was a local basketball star in nearby Niagara College. Calvin Murphy went on to be drafted by the Rockets, and he had a Hall of Fame career. In the first season, the Buffalo Braves had a record of 22-60, which was typical for an expansion franchise. And next year, they drafted Randy Smith and Elmore Smith in 1971. And the second season, they did not do much better. They were 22-60, and they got a head coach, but who was one of the greatest NBA coaches of all time. Dr. Jack Ramsey started to coach the Buffalo Braves in the third season, and they also did not improve on their record. Still had 21-61 record for the third season, but in 1973 they drafted 2 players that became stars on their team for the Buffalo Braves. Bob McAdoo, who was one of the best players coming out of North Carolina at the time, and Ernie Del Giglio from Providence, and they gelled together along with Randy Smith and Elmore Smith and a couple of other players. And in 1973-74, the Buffalo Braves hosted their first winning season, 42-40. Ernie Delgado was the NBA Rookie of the Year, and Buffalo Braves had their first played in their first playoff series. They lost this series to the Boston Celtics in 6 games in the Eastern Conference semifinals. The Boston Celtics went on to win the NBA championship that year. The next year, 1974-1975, was the Buffalo Braves' best season. They had a record of 49-33. They lost in the first round of the Eastern Conference semifinals to the Washington Bullets, who eventually were the NBA's Eastern Conference champions. And that was the year that Bob McAdoo won the most valuable player in the National Basketball Association. And in 1975-1976, the Buffalo Braves finished with a record of 46-36 in the regular season, and they won their first playoff series. They beat the Philadelphia 76ers in the first round of the playoffs, 2-1, and then they went on to the Eastern Conference semifinals to face off against the Boston Celtics once again. And they lost to the Celtics 4-2. The Boston Celtics eventually won the NBA championship that year. And the Buffalo Braves were getting to be a very good NBA team, but they were having some problems with the ownership because the crowds at the Buffalo Memorial Auditorium weren't as big, which was surprisingly because the Braves had a good team. And the owner, Paul Schneider, had a deal in place to sell his franchise to a hotel owner in Hollywood, Florida, by the name of Irvin Cowan for over $6 million. Irvin Cowan was going to move the Buffalo Braves to a new state-of-the-art facility in Hollywood, Florida. But that deal fell through at the last minute, and Paul Schneider signed a 15-year contract extension lease with the Buffalo Memorial Auditorium, but there was a clause in the lease that could be voided if the Buffalo Braves did not get 5,000 season ticket holders and stuff like that. And also Paul Schneider was going to put the Buffalo Braves on the market to be sold. And he sold it midway through the 1976-77 season to John Y. Brown, who used to be the governor of Kentucky. And he was also once married to former Miss America Phyllis George, who also, Phyllis George was one of the hosts for the NFL Today on CBS back in the 70s. And then the Buffalo Braves just sold off Bob McAdoo to the New York Knicks. They sold off a lot of other players. Dr. Jack Ramsey left as coach of the Buffalo Braves to coach the Portland Trail Blazers. The Trail Blazers won the NBA championship in 1976-77. And the Buffalo Braves had future Basketball Hall of Famer Moses Malone played for the team for 2 games in 1976-77, but he was traded to the Houston Rockets, and then the bottom fell out of the Braves. They finished with a 30-52 record in 1976-77, and the last year they were in Buffalo, 27-55. Attendance at the Odd in Buffalo for Braves games was getting to be bad, under 5,000 a game, and the future of the Braves in Buffalo was in serious doubt. And then John Y. Brown was talking with the owner of the Boston Celtics, Irv Levine, about swapping franchises, because Irv Levine was actually from San Diego, California, and he really wanted an NBA team in his hometown of San Diego. The NBA was not going to allow the Boston Celtics to move to San Diego under any circumstances. So he and John Brown were talking about swapping franchises. John Y. Brown would get the Boston Celtics, and Irv Levine would get the Buffalo Braves, and he made a plan, and he was going to move the Buffalo Braves to San Diego. And in 1978, this deal was constructed about the NBA, about Brown and Levine swapping NBA franchises. It was made. The deal was consumed by NBA General Counsel leader at the time, David Stern, who became NBA Commissioner. And when it came up to the vote, the NBA owners were in favor, 21-1, to approve the franchise swap transfer, and also to approve the Buffalo Braves moving to San Diego. And it was sad to see the Braves move out of Buffalo to San Diego because they had a pretty good team, but once the ownership was going to be moved and like change of ownership, the fans didn't come to Buffalo at all to support the Braves and stuff like that. The Braves moved and they became the San Diego Clippers. In 1984, they moved to Los Angeles to become the Los Angeles Clippers. It was 16 years in between playoff appearances for the Braves/Clippers franchise, 1976 to 1992, and Buffalo has not been considered at all for a future NBA team via expansion or relocation, which is pretty shameful because I think Buffalo could support an NBA team. They have a good arena, the HSBC Center, or whatever they call it right now, and Buffalo Braves had some potential to become a top NBA team in the 70s. They gave the Celtics some troubles during playoff series in 1974 and 1976. They had a decent amount of good players like Bob McAdoo, who became a Hall of Famer, and Randy Smith, who was a consistent All-Star, and Ernie Delgado, who was a decent NBA player and stuff. So they had potential to become a great team and stuff like that. And it was those things happen in sports, and that's about it on the Buffalo Braves franchise. And I'll be back later, Facebook friends and YouTube followers, with 2 more video blogs. One video blog will be about Bus 13 for the the LRTA, Lower Regional Transit Authority, and the third and final video blog of the night will be about former Toronto Blue Jays catcher, first baseman, designated hitter Carlos Delgado. And I hope you like the picture I'm doing today. This video blog of Abraham Lincoln. Have a good day, Facebook, YouTube, Daily Motion, Twitter. Bye.